Welcome to the Red Diamond Wargame Podcast. I am your host, Major Kurt Locker Honig, and joining me today is Captain Greg Fitzpatrick of the United States Army. Greg, thank you for joining me today.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Please note that all opinions expressed are entirely those of the participants and do not reflect the United States Marine Corps, the United States Army, their units, or any other organizations of which they are a part. So, Greg, why don't you start us off by telling us more about your background and how you came into wargaming?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm an Army infantry officer. Just finished up 4 years in Germany. I was a striker troop commander with the Second Cavalry Regiment, and then spent some time at U.S. Army Europe and Africa. Most recently, I am an Omar Bradley Fellow, which means I'm getting a master's degree at Georgetown University, and then we'll spend 2 years working at the Pentagon. So I've got a year at DARPA coming up next year, and then following that, I'll go to the Army staff. So as for wargaming, it's something I've done for years as a hobby. And a couple of years ago, one of my fellow troop commanders, a buddy of mine at the Second Cavalry Regiment, got wind of this Marine Corps University wargaming tournament, and so we signed up. And we've been having a great time. We played in the tournament last year, and it's great. So trying to sign up for any of the open tournaments. Obviously not a student at MCU, so don't get all of them, but it's a good time and appreciate being able to jump in with the Marines.
Yeah, this is an outstanding tournament because it really is open to not only the joint force but also allies, and we keep kind of getting beat up by the Polish Land Forces Academy. Those cadets out there are exceptional in the way they approach a lot of these problems. Who all composes your team? These are a team of 4 events. So who all is a part of your team? What's your team name?
So we're the 135th Infantry Division. That's if you know your Army history, that's one of the Phantom divisions from Patton's Phantom Army.
That's right.
Prior to the Normandy invasion. So last year I was a free agent because my buddy had a number of E4s from his troop who made up his team. This year, the two of us are on the same team. We've got one of those E4s, a specialist, and then we've got you know what? I apologize. I think he's a sergeant now. I think he's promoted, and then we've got one of the field grades, the majors, who was at 2CR. So it's kind of the Second Cavalry Regiment alumni team right now.
Nice.
Yeah.
Do they all have background in the game or in wargaming, or are we dragging them kicking and screaming into this new tournament?
So what my buddy did last year, I think really gets after what this is designed to do. So he was the MI troop commander, the military intelligence troop commander, okay, at the regiment, and he took a number of his junior enlisted soldiers and got them into this game, and they actually ran through doctrinal IPO to prep the battle, and so they came out with all their products, their enemy analysis, their terrain analysis, all their correlation of forces, all the stuff that you want to see. And they did that for the game, and so that's how they played it. And I thought that was really well done use of the medium. Now, the current team, we've got one of those junior enlisted who participated. He does have a background in games, but not so much the hex encounter games like this. And then the major, the field grade officer, this is his first time in the game as well.
Nice. Awesome. Has their experience generally been positive? Is your team doing well this year?
Yeah, we're doing okay this year. I think we're kind of middle of the pack, upper half, but some learning curves, figuring out mechanics for some of the folks on the team. I think we'll see how Italy finishes up. I'm pretty confident we'll move up a couple of rankings here.
Yeah. So. No, that's outstanding, and it is a challenge. I've already lost one teammate due to operational demands.
Yep,
Yeah, he just there's not enough internet connection in the Philippines for him to be able to really stick with it.
that's
But
right.
the rest of us all successfully completed the breakout campaign. I'm still wrapping up Italy, which that's a fascinating, compelling scenario because it really forces a ton of decision making. But you and I were opponents in the first scenario, which was Breakout. So fun that your team name refers to one of the Phantom divisions that was under Patton to help create that deception plan, tying up a lot of German forces over near the Calais area, assuming that we would be invading over the shortest portion of the English Channel. But instead, we invaded Normandy, and this scenario picks up right whenever we have begun massing forces, and now we're kind of pinned down and we need to break out, hence the name. So, what was your approach into, on the Allies side, how you were going to solve this problem?
So I think on the Allied side, you get some interesting choices. You start out with a lot of infantry, and you've got a lot of forces, but you're all bottled up, and you don't have a lot of maneuver space. You're opposed by dug in, pretty combat effective German forces, but there's not a lot of reserves behind them. And I think as we look at some of the advantages that the Allies have, you've got a overwhelming air superiority, so you're going to be able to affect the enemy with that. And you also have a lot of replacements, so you're able to easily replace losses. So my operational concept here, as I thought about it, what I really wanted to do was have a fight in Normandy. I wanted the German forces to be fixed in Normandy and fight a battle of attrition here. We trade step for step. And then I wanted to use my mobile units, my armored divisions, to break out. So one of my maxims was I don't want to use any of my armor to fight in Normandy. I was going to try to preserve that completely. So I used the British, and I wanted to get across the Seine River on the first turn, and I think I was able to get just short of it. But that was their only goal. Get across the river, because that would deny you a fallback position.
Mm-hmm.
With the Americans, I wanted to try to create a penetration along the on the west side. I think it's Avranches right there. And if I could get through to Avranches, then I could start passing my armor units. The key, though, is that I really need you to stay in Normandy. I need the Germans to stay there. So once my armor gets through, I can go through and turn over to exploitation, and then have my infantry clean up the rest of the Germans that are trapped there. The first time I played this scenario last year, my opponent reinforced his German forces and really tried to hold me in. And what that meant was on the last turn of the game, there were still German infantry units fighting in Normandy, but I had taken all the victory points behind. So that's what I was trying to do. What I did not want to do was create a penetration in the center that would force you to abandon Normandy. So I didn't want to be too successful on the first turn.
Nice, awesome. Yeah, my approach was very drawn along national lines, where I knew I was going to have two different generals ready to run two different fronts on the U.S. side, and then one general on the British. And I say the British, I'm lumping in the Poles and the Canadians, right? So on the map, you see them depicted in the yellow orange, whereas all the American units are depicted in green. And so my idea was I'm going to have three different prongs that are going to try to disrupt and make sure that I can just isolate German units as they either try to hold fast or gradually pull back. Because in my experience last year, that was something that really bogged me down, is I kept trying to isolate like one big chunk, and I just was going too slow. I couldn't break out. I was making progress every turn, but not enough so that I was able to really go out and secure a ton of victory points. And I have to admit, by whatever method, you were doing a fantastic job of making it to where I couldn't ever gain any momentum. because if I created a gap into one of my three prongs, you very quickly put German armor in the rear, which it left them exposed. But what I didn't account for was how devastating that was going to be to my supply and logistics. And WarPlan as a game absolutely punishes you for that. And so by just having one, and I think at one point you had two tank divisions in my rear, and while it wasn't doing anything victory point wise, it meant that none of my reinforcements were actually like reconstituting any of my units. So they rapidly were diminishing their ability to do anything. So that was quite the disruption. Was that something that you had planned to do initially, or was that something that you saw an opportunity that I gave to you and you exploited?
That was my plan. On the German side, my goal was to absolutely not fight in Normandy. And I think, if you really want to win this as the Germans, and you really want to get a lot of victory points, you have to fight in Normandy and hold the Allies in. But I think this comes down to I don't know who my opponent is. And so on the first turn, I can take that high risk, high reward strategy of defending forward and trying to prevent the breakout. But if I'm facing a competent allied player, you're going to get through, and you did. You were able to penetrate on the first turn, and so knowing that, I decided what I really wanted to do was I wasn't going to fight a battle of attrition. I didn't want to go blow for blow. I knew that you as the allies are going to get more reinforcements. You're going to have a lot of folks, so the losses are going to affect me a lot more than they will you. My advantage, though, as the Germans, is I have these mobile divisions, these really combat effective Panzer divisions, and so my goal was to draw those back and allow them to reconstitute, allow them to reorganize, and build up some of their combat effectiveness. While I use my infantry to kind of delay your advance, and then I was gonna use counterattacks to prevent you from being effective. And as you try to concentrate, you're trying to mass your combat power to take key objectives like get to Paris. That's going to necessarily open up options and gaps in your line that I'm going to be able to exploit. And so that's what I wanted to do. As I wanted to play a mobile defense there. So a really like a battle of maneuver in the open there. As the Germans, I've got the advantage of logistics here. Everywhere I go is in supply for me. But you are establishing supply lines. You've got these railroads that your troops actually have to take time to repair. You've got these port facilities that you're trying to seize. So as I'm able to eliminate that, I can cause outsized damage to you, and I think that's what happened with the British Army. You were effective in breaching the line. You pushed a lot of combat power forward. You were threatening Rouen and were able to get across the Seine River pretty quickly. That was creating some problems for me. But when I got in behind you and cut off your logistics, your whole army stalls out there along the river, and you weren't able to get into Paris, which was critical.
Yeah, and I always think it's kind of like the highlight of engaging with a quality opponent, where in the span of one turn, I would have this like this emotional high of, oh, I can do this. All I have to do is X, Y, and Z, and in the same term, like there's no way. Like he's completely got me. There's nothing I can do. And just trying to take a step back and kind of look at the situation and how I could get the supply line back. Because I thought I was on the other side of the sign. This is great. I'm simply going to flow right down. I'm going to take Paris and not have to fight over the sign in order to, because I've done that against the computer where they just took so long because you're having to fight across the river. So flowing along behind the sign, that's the key to success. And then they're done. They could never reconstitute. I could never get their combat effectiveness back up over 50, 60% because your counterattack, your ability to sneak in just those one or two panzer divisions completely left that army like they were completely stranded. So that was a big lesson for me in this year. Well, I say this year in my second attempt. I'm trying very hard to preserve those things. It's making me move a lot slower. And now I'm really agonizing between, do I need to be more aggressive, risk some more units to get further out? But again, I don't want to risk those supply lines. I'm going to run out of turns to take Paris at this point because I'm physically moving so slow trying to preserve all those supply lines.
I think those are some of the key dilemmas that we face in these games. And you'll see on the leaderboard, you'll see that sometimes folks rack up enormous point deficits. And you really do that by being very aggressive and giving your opponent some of these opportunities. You have to take these risks. The problem is if you run into somebody who's able to take advantage of that, you can really you can really hurt yourself. And I think that like you were you obviously like knew how the game worked and were taking it seriously and were you were trying to break through, and so I understood that I wasn't going to be able to retake Normandy. That was just out of the question. You know, you have a lot of forces, you're moving forward, and so really it was on the German side. I'm just trying to limit how much the Americans are able to, or the Allies are able to take. So sometimes I think that's what we have to do, and that's a great lesson as we look at wargaming. Competitive decision making. The enemy
Yep.
does have a vote. They get to do something, and so even though I think that I've got my great plan and I've set conditions and I've figured out what I need to do over the next 3 turns, which is in this game is simulating the next 15 days.
Hmm.
Uh, the enemy still has a vote, and they can change that. So I need to take that into consideration.
Yeah, and speaking of my familiarity with the game, I still learned a pretty important lesson because in my play testing against the computer, I was trying to see if it was possible to deploy my troops on other landing zones. Just I know I don't have assault craft. I have to enter into a port, but I would drive the Germans out, and I would try to drop someone off, and it wouldn't let me do it. And so the lesson that I learned too late was that you had to own the port for a turn, which makes sense. Your point before about, well, you can't just you know say you have a port, you got to rebuild the thing. You got to make sure you got to account for the idea that you have to secure the thing before you start bringing troops and flooding those in. You knew that, and you handled your employment of your airborne as a way to, as rapidly as possible, seize key ports and then begin flowing forces in an unexpected direction, forcing me to change my plan to address what was going on. Was that another example of an opportunity that you seized, or was that a game plan going in?
That was that was a I think that was a decision that I had to make. It was something that I considered. You've got the airborne, and you can jump them into the vicinity of Paris. You can try to disperse them to seize different victory points around the board,
Hmm.
or you can try to open up a port like I did. And what I looked at how you were defending along the river, and so what I really decided I wanted to do was I wanted to fix a bunch of your replacements, a bunch of your reinforcements. I wanted to divert them. I wanted them to go up into the Netherlands and Belgium and hold me back there, where you're defending 2 or 3 victory points instead of coming down to Paris where you're defending 6. And so that's why I ended up jumping them in. And I think you did a really good job though at looking at that threat and then not overreacting. You didn't send your really highly combat effective divisions up there. There weren't any Panzer divisions that got diverted. You sent some second rate replacements to kind of hold the line and limit your losses. And I think I was able to seize like 2 or 3 victory points up there. But it didn't really divert the number of troops that I had hoped. So you were able to send those down to the real critical fight, which was the fight along the Seine River and in front of Paris. So I think that was good. And in the past, I've seen it go both ways. Either the airborne can get wiped out in those jumps, you jump them too far ahead, and they're not able to get supported, or the enemy can completely overreact, the Axis overreact and send a lot of combat power up there, and you have two or three airborne divisions that tie down an entire armored corps. That's a great trade.
Yeah, yeah, and that's the fun challenge of airborne in general, right? Like you, and I think this game does a very good job of forcing you to kind of think through your employment of them because it's tempting to just send them deep, but you have to know whether or not you're going to reach them because they'll go out of supply within 3 days. And now every turn, they're not only losing combat effectiveness, but you're one turn closer to just completely losing them. So they're not engaging any units there, and I think I've seen it where they'll be employed someplace and you just ignore them. Like you don't have to fight them. You don't have to waste your own combat power. You simply have to stop them from linking up, and then they're gone. And now you've eliminated a unit at no expense to yourself other than time, and you're able to keep right on doing exactly what it was you were going to do in the first place. So that's a critical lesson just in airborne employment overall, as we've seen in the Ukraine-Russian conflict. It's very easy to just say, well, I'm going to drop this airborne division on an airport. It's like true, but can you link up in time so that that remains an effective force, or are you now struggling to actually make them useful? And for me, I've tried to use them almost the same way in the Italy campaign, where instead of constant amphibious assaults up the shoreline, I'll put them someplace close. I'll let them be another unit that attacks a defender, prevents that defender from being resupplied, and then immediately begin reconstituting so that I can drop them again. And it only works every 3 or 4 turns because it takes a little while to recover from the jump. And if they get beat up too bad in combat, it could take a while to replenish them because they have to be over 100% in order to jump. But I've actually been able to jump the 82nd Airborne a couple of times in the Italy campaign that way. So those are some really interesting ways to use the airborne.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. And where did you jump your 82nd Airborne in the Italian campaign? Where was your first jump?
The first jump, if I remember correctly, it was just immediately to the north of the German units that were trying to defend Naples.
Okay, yeah, I think I in the Italian campaign I used the 82nd in a similar manner. I actually jumped them into Potenza, uh,
Oh, nice.
which which allowed me, as I linked up with them with the British coming out of Toronto,
Hmm.
that cut off the German mechanized divisions, the Panzer and Panzer Grenadier division down in the boot that were
Yeah.
facing the British Eighth Army, and
Hmm.
so and then I was able, like you said, I was able to jump them again
Yep.
into Rome and seize a port and get in there.
Nice.
But my opponent went for the home run and jumped directly into Rome. He was able to open a port. He landed three infantry divisions.
Wow. All right.
Yeah, I mean, it was rocking and rolling, but I was able to retake the port,
Yeah.
and then he lost all four divisions,
Yep. Because they're stranded.
and
Yeah.
and yeah, he was only able to get a single victory point out of that. So at the end of the
Nice.
game, he had one unit and one victory point. So I'd taken four of his divisions, trapped them, and I had three of my divisions that had him bottled up. I was like, again, it was a good trade, and it resulted in a favorable correlation of forces down with the main fight, the main effort there.
Yeah, again, the Italy campaign. There's so many different ways to slice that one. That's one of the reasons why that campaign is so compelling. It makes me wonder why it wasn't on the list last year. But I also suspect that last year, Colonel Tim Barrack, the director of Marine Corps University Wargaming, I think he was trying to be a little more chronological. But I think this year he's being a little more. I have these different operational concepts that I want to test. So last year, the three scenarios were Breakout, Market Garden, which is a very compelling challenge in terms of just the number of forces that you have. Where are you going to leverage success? Are you going to attempt to mass and have a mobile defense, try to counterattack, etc.? And then finally, Bagration, which that's a big deal because now it's the first introduction to Russian forces, the sheer number of units that you have, but the same challenge of how are you going to supply all of those units. That's the first time I've ever seen like, oh my gosh, I'm about to slam a home run, except now I'm out of oil and now I've got no air, I've got no tanks, I've got nothing. This is awful. To be that close to victory points and not be able to touch them. Whereas this year we're finishing up the Italy campaign right now, with all the decisions that went into that, and we're going to be doing Barbarossa. So that's an interesting opposite of Bagration. So now we're looking at the German plan on how to invade Russia. And that's actually where you're going to see a huge number of top tier German units going against, again, a large number of Russian units. So very interesting to see the different ways. I haven't played the Barbarossa scenario yet. I haven't tested it because I want to focus on Italy while it's still wrapping up. Um, what are your thoughts on the scenarios from last year compared to this year?
Yeah, I think this breakout scenario is a great one. It's got some great decisions that it presents you with, and some great problems to try to solve, and it has a little balance how you transition from that those like set piece attacks trying to create a penetration to exploitation and pursuit. I think that's really interesting. The scenarios last year, the market garden scenario, I think was also really interesting. You had you would think that as the allies you got overwhelming force, and you just don't. You have to pick and choose where you're going to attack, and the Germans have enough combat power they can really create some problems for you. How they manage that, and then Bagration is that's a favorite of mine. I like the study of that is really interesting. So I appreciated playing that one. This year, I agree with you. The Italy campaign is outstanding. Not as many units on the board, and yet a ton of choices at how you're going to approach that. So, are you going to attack right up the coast towards Rome? Are you going to fight on the plain, the out in Taranto, and fight a mobile campaign over there? How are you going to employ your airborne? For the Germans, you've got decisions about how you're going to use your panzer divisions. Are you going to dig them in the mountains, or are you going to use them driving around trying to outmaneuver the British? So some really good choices there. I'm interested to do Barbarossa. I've run through one practice round just quickly, just kind of messing around with a friend, one of my teammates, and I to be on, I don't want to reveal anything, obviously, but I don't know how the Soviets are going to hold on to anything against a truly competent German player. So I might need to just dig into it a little bit more, and see some of the mechanics. I think some of the units upgrade over time, and so it might have some more combat effectiveness. But to give you some perspective, they have like the relative combat power score, and it tells you how combat effective each unit is. And so on this like arbitrary scale, some of the German units in the front line have a score of over 20, and the Russian units facing them, or the Soviet units facing them, have like a 2 or a 3.
Yeah,
So I mean, they just get blown away.
yeah, yeah. It's exciting, and I really think what Tim is trying to accomplish through this tournament. It's broken down into two divisions. So you are in the forces division, and there's also a PME division. It's open to the joint force, so we love to have representatives from the U.S. Army. Love to get the Navy involved. I don't know how excited Navy is to discuss land campaigns when there's not a lot of ship moving around. But getting the Air Force involved is always very interesting. So glad to see the Army involvement. Hoping to continue to see that involvement grow, and eventually put Tim in this dilemma of, oh my gosh, I have too many people that are trying to participate in this. Do you have any other means to try to, now that you're in a school setting, so you have fewer soldiers around to try to rope into this, do you have a recruiting campaign in place to try to get more participants in the Marine Corps University WarPlan tournament, or just wargaming in general?
Yeah, so actually, so I'm at Georgetown right now, and if you're familiar with Littoral
Oh,
Commander,
yep.
yeah,
Yeah,
so that's
Sebastian
Jim
Bays.
Day.
Yeah.
So he's a professor here, and he runs the Georgetown University Wargaming Society. He's the
Yep.
faculty advisor. So I participate in that, and they do webinars, and then they have open wargaming days. They've done a number of different classes. So uh, Marine Corps University came up and facilitated a session of OWS, the
Nice.
Operational
Good.
Warfare System, and
Hmm.
then let's see, we've done a Kriegspiel event, we've done a wargaming facilitation class. That's been really good. I'm in a cohort right now. So the Army, with this fellowship that I'm in, the Army sends 20 officers, 20 captains to Georgetown as part of this program every year. And so we sit down, we do Littoral Commander. We've done a couple of sessions of that, getting some folks interested in that, and we'll see if I can get them roped in next year. If we can get a couple of teams entered in for the Forces Division for Warplan, I think that would be great. I'm also participating in the top tactics and trying to. We'll
Good.
see if we
Yep.
can get down to the is it the Commandant's Cup? I think
Commandant's
is
Cup. That's
in
right.
April.
Modern day
Yeah.
Marine. Hmm.
So I'm in the area, so really gunning for that. If hoping to get in on that. So
Yeah, I hope so too. And Tim has been extremely candid, and I'm unfortunately still sitting on an episode with Captain Tidwell, who's administrating the Top Tactics tournament. Hopefully, I can set aside some time today to get that episode launched. But he's done a fantastic job, and they both are working very hard to try to get the right representation in the Commandant's Cup. And what I mean by that is, like, one, we'd love to just open it up to anybody and everybody. But if current trends are any indication, then the cup would mostly be represented by Polish Land Force University cadets, because what they're working on out there is fantastic. It also makes a lot of sense. Poland has a legitimate reason to have a lot of emphasis on training their guys how to think operationally with great threats off to their immediate east. So it makes sense that they're doing a lot of really good work there. We want to make sure there are Marines at Modern Day Marine for obvious reasons, but we also want to see allies out there. We want to see joint force out there. I don't believe we had any Army representation last year. We did have some Canadians, or excuse me, a Canadian and a German out there, which was pretty cool. But I'd love to see a couple of soldiers out there as well. So excited that you're participating in Top Tactics. Not to dive into that one since you and I didn't square off in that, but what's been your impression of the Top Tactics tournament so far?
I think that one's been interesting. Looking at the with the drones and the ISR, how it is in that game, it is real tough. If you don't have the preponderance of the fires assets to have a good effect. I think I've been doing pretty well in that tournament so far, and I think a lot of that has been through mistakes that my opponents have made rather than tactical master strokes. So we'll see how that one shapes up. But I will say when I went to the maneuver captain's career course, the Army's captain's school,
Hmm.
we had a number of Marine officers who came and participated in that, and they were really great about bringing some of the competitive decision making and the
Yep.
wargaming into that course. So wargaming was something that I'd really done as a hobby. I don't think that the Army has a really strong culture of tactical wargaming and like
Okay.
decision forcing cases and tactical decision games at the small unit level. We look at war games and CPXs and that kind of thing at higher echelons and as staff training tools a lot of times. But I remember distinctly going through a scenario where we were serving as a brigade staff, and we had a plan. We were going to seize three objectives. We really needed to seize objective C. That was like our primary objective, but we had objective A and B along the way that we were going to seize. They were kind of our intermediate objectives, and as we launched into the operation. we run into more enemy forces on objective A than we had expected, and so we start committing all sorts of forces and adjusting our plan, and the whole staff is sucked into that. And we had
Yeah.
I remember the Marine sitting off to the side, and he sits there and he says,
The
"Hey,
head slowly going up.
yeah, wait a sec. We don't actually need to seize objective A.
Yeah.
We can just go straight for C. The enemy has put all their stuff here. Why don't we just go there?" And we looked at it and said, "Yeah, that's a good point. Why don't we just do that? We can just drive down to objective C. It's open." And so we went down there, and we're able to be successful. And so that's something, that kind of thing. Just being able to look at a situation and understand what your objectives are and what the enemy is trying to do and what you need to do, and holding on to that, I think that's pretty difficult. And that is something that wargaming does. It helps you get work through that competitive decision making, where you get some experience taking somebody else on, taking on another opponent who's thinking through and really trying to beat you. They're trying to use every tool at their disposal to outwit you. So I think that's an advantage, and I'd like to see that more widely incorporated across the Army, certainly across the whole joint force. Have some of those competencies.
Yep, absolutely agree. It's the reason why we're doing this podcast, trying to get more and more leaders, small unit leaders, all the way up through those large units to recognize our ability to make decisions ultimately is going to be a difference maker in how we find success in combat. And it's something that we can't afford to set to the wayside. In the Marine Corps, we talk about maneuver warfare. And while it's very easy to look at maneuver warfare as the pieces on the board moving into gaps instead of surfaces, it's a lot more than that. It's what can I do to disrupt my enemy's ability to make decisions? Because if I am outcycling decisions because I recognize them through training, through wargaming, hey, I've seen this before. I see what he's doing. I'm not going to allow him to distract me. I'm going to focus on my objective, and by so doing, I'm going to stop them from being able to find success in what it is they want to do. And in that way, I'm going to win. So that's what wargaming delivers to us, I think, in a very simplistic way, but also it's not exactly expensive. I'm not burning huge amounts of gas to have my troops sit in the back of a striker while I'm moving around a range. And while cool, getting to blow stuff up, the mental repetitions that those soldiers get, I think, are going to make them more understanding of their roles in the fight. Where, hey, we don't need to engage that guy. I'd love to see that guy blow up. He's not my target. He's not my objective. Destroying him is not actually going to further our cause. But that guy over there, if I take him out, now I've really begun to affect the battlefield. And the sooner that even the sergeants and below can recognize that, the better off the entire force is going to be.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. In the top tactics tournament, I think the scenario is you've got the People's Republic of China, and you've got the Taiwanese forces, the ROC, defending. The PRC in each of the scenarios has a large number of one-way attack munitions, one-way attack drones, and I've watched my opponent use these drones on infantry squads and machine gun teams in my first echelon, while I've got armor and air defense and all of my enablers in the back. And if you would, I think that type of decision making, be able to look at a set and say, okay, what are we really trying to do here? And you talk about maneuver warfare. You're absolutely right. That I think one of the key tenets of that is that we're setting our strengths against the enemy's weakness. We talk surfaces and gaps, but I know in the Army we're talking a lot about these asymmetric advantages and how we maneuver in domains other than just land. So what does that mean? What does it mean to, like, how can you use fires in maneuver warfare? And well, that's using fires against their weaknesses. So how am I able to take those drones, for example, that the opponent doesn't have a way to really shoot down or to avoid or to make less effective. Where should I be setting those? Well, probably I don't need to use it on his infantry. I don't need to
Right.
use it on these machine gun teams. Even if that machine gun team might be in a key position,
Hmm.
really, I need these drones to go back and target some of his key capabilities. Because once he doesn't have air defense, once he doesn't have his EW systems,
Yep.
if I'm able to disrupt his armor, then I'm able to really set conditions
Yes.
earlier on. So we talk a lot about the extended battlefield. That's the Army's old concept of air land battle. And if you look at multi-domain operations today, it's really the same thing. We're doing air land battle. We're combining multiple domains, not just air and land, to create effects and to stretch things out. So I want to fight you and set conditions so that when I get to the close fight, I overmatch you.
Yep.
And I think as we look at the Warplan tournament, even in the breakout scenarios like the Allies, that was kind of what I was trying to do. So I want to get my armor units, my allied armor units. They're not really combat. They don't have a lot of combat power. They're not going to be really effective fighting. But if I can get them deep, I can disrupt you. I can cut off your logistics. I can affect you so that when my infantry does arrive, conditions are set for them to be very successful, and I can take out your units.
Yep. Absolutely. Absolutely. And I've always enjoyed the slow recognition, whatever name we call a lot of our doctrine, where, like, yes, I would rather send my guys at targets that are going to have a lot more effect, right? Like by disrupting EW, by destroying anti-air assets. That's going to help the survivability of my guys. It just makes a lot more sense. So I'm always looking for that. I'm excited. It sounds like you're going to be participating in the expeditionary engagements tournament that's going to be coming up pretty soon. I'm excited for that because now we're going to test a little more of the amphibious concept and a lot of the very challenging decisions that go into there. Is there anything in particular you're looking forward to seeing out of that tournament?
Yeah, I mean, I'm an Army guy, so we don't do a lot of the amphibious operation planning. So I'm really looking forward to kind of sinking my teeth into that. I think I'm going to approach that from the lens of an airborne or air assault operation and how we do things in the Army. So the same planning cycle, how you do that. You start with the ground tactical plan, and then you're setting conditions as you back up to make that effective. And I think I'll be interested to see like what forces are available, how you're introducing those forces, how you set conditions to introduce those forces. And again, really looking forward to learning from the Marines that I'm gonna play against and with, and see what they do well and what they don't do well, and what I do well and don't do well. I mean, that's the beauty of these war games. I mean, they're not perfect simulations for real life, obviously, but I think you can draw some interesting lessons and hopefully improve yourself. So.
Yeah, absolutely. And this one is going to be the Flashpoint Campaigns Pro. Have you had a chance to play that type of game yet, or prepare the way that one
No,
works?
no,
Okay.
not yet. I'm so I'm in school right now, just working through finals and closing out my last minute things here at the end of the semester, and then here over the holidays, I'll probably see if I can get a couple of practice rounds or a practice round with some of my teammates or with my teammate who's in this tournament, and we'll see what it looks like. I heard great things about the system, about the platform. Talked to somebody who did it last year, who had a really good time and looked at their planning and what they did for. Again, I think you can get a lot of value out of this if you come at it as an operation rather than a board game. So if you
That's right.
decide that you're gonna step through and follow the processes that you would in your day job, you can get a lot of value. And watch somebody do that, and it looked like a really good really good scenario last year. So hoping to get a
Yep.
crack at it and sink my teeth into it. How about you? Have you been able to
I've
look at it?
not tested any new scenarios yet. I was lucky enough to participate in the Commandant's Cup last year, so I had. Unfortunately, it wasn't until the cup itself that I got to play a whole scenario all the way through, because in the preliminary tournament my opponent fell out. But what I will tell you is the Brute Krulak YouTube page has some of the tutorials on there. It's definitely important to do that because one, the mechanics are different, and it doesn't mean that they're harder, it doesn't mean that they're bad, they're simply different, and if you're not prepared for it, then game mechanics becomes a reason why you don't find success, and that's not how I want to win a match anyway, right? I want you to bring your A game. So recognizing that this is not a moving pieces on the board type system. This is a I'm going to issue orders to all the pieces on the board and they're going to go do it, and at infrequent intervals I will get to update those, recognizing that every time that I give them new orders, that is going to slow their responsiveness down. So the due diligence on the front end of having a good plan so that I can update those orders as little as possible is going to give me that speed, like we were just talking about, that decisiveness advantage. They're not slowing down or exposing themselves. We're talking now adding a little more of that electromagnetic warfare spectrum, right? They're not having to get on the net, flagging themselves potentially, just so I can tell them, hey, go forward a couple more spaces. No, they know where to go. Let them get out of their way, let them fight, and that is going to really shape how I find success in that system. So, uh, definitely all the ins and outs of how you move from the ship to shore. The tutorial is going to be really helpful. It's done by Captain Tidwell. He does an exceptional job getting all the really important information out there so that it's your operational planning that's going to be what your opponent is fighting, and not you fighting the system and then your opponent.
Yeah, that's really good. Like I said, I'm looking forward to that. I think it's a great opportunity and not a type of operation that I'm familiar with. So
Yep.
again, great that MCU is doing this type of thing.
Yep. And the last thing I'll tell you, I do hope you find your way into the Commandant's Cup, because you said you've been exposed to the operational wargame system, the system that was developed by Tim Barrick, and the one of the most fun parts about the Commandant's Cup is making it to the finals and getting to play Joint Tactics Arena, which is a tournament version of OWS. And talk about a full test of your ability to, through the entire spectrum of all the domains, what can you all bring to bear on a perfectly mirrored enemy, perfectly mirrored terrain, to create an advantage and win. So there's definitely a lot of really really good resources out there. I don't know if he's got it out for publication yet, but as soon as he does, I'm hunting down a copy because I want some reps on that system. It's an exceptional one to play.
Yeah, yeah, really good. And even if obviously I'm an army guy, so not a and to your previous comments about making sure we get Marines into the Commandant's Cup, that absolutely makes sense, and fully expect that's going to be the case. So if for whatever reason I'm not able to get in, like I'm in the area, so I plan to head down and see what's going on and see it in person. So check it out. It's I think the Marines are doing a lot of great things. I think the MCU is doing a lot of great things with wargaming, and I hope we can continue to expand the use of wargaming, not just for analysis, but for the competitive decision making and getting the experiential learning in across the joint force.
Yep. Now that makes a lot of sense. Now you had talked about a little personal background in wargaming coming into the army. Does that sound accurate?
Yeah, I mean, grew up playing board games, and I really enjoy hex and counter games. I don't have I don't have like a long list of games that I played, but war games, computer strategy games, military strategy games, and that kind of thing. I've really enjoyed. I think where the type of games that I often struggle with or don't find as interesting are the games that I think give you too much control. So one of the things about WarPlan that I think is good is that everything below the division level is abstracted,
Yep.
and so it would just be totally unrealistic for General Eisenhower to be affecting the displacement, or the disposition of companies or platoons. And so in some of these systems, you'll see, hey, like I'm going to play the Eastern Front during World War II, and I'm going to put down every single regiment or division. Like I don't know about that. Or if I'm controlling like the weapon control status of an individual soldier or marine in a squad, that doesn't really do it for me. I prefer games where you don't have that level of control, because that's what I found in when I go to the field. Even as a troop commander, company commander, with 150 to 200 soldiers, like there are things I can and can't control, and so you have to work through your subordinate leaders. You have to give clear intent, but then you have to understand that actually I can't control what that private is pointing his rifle at and what he's going to engage and not engage. So hopefully I've set conditions for him to know what he needs to engage and not engage, and hopefully I've empowered the junior leaders so that they feel comfortable making those decisions and they're able to make those decisions in line with my intent. So I think that's kind of my wargaming background and my philosophy as I approach wargames and what I find interesting.
Yep. No, and I think that's absolutely fantastic. One of the questions I really enjoy asking guests is the Marine Corps has its commandant's reading list. So the very top Marine publishes every year the list of books that he thinks everyone should read. And sometimes they're specifically into categories, right? Innovation, history, doctrine. And then sometimes they're broken down a little more specifically for these are what we think our junior enlisted should be reading. These are what our junior officers should be reading. Our field grades and our commanders should be reading these titles. And I would argue that someday we're going to reach a point where we should have a commandant's wargaming list, where we have a series of games that really break down whether it's, again, by innovation, by doctrine, by history, whether it's by junior enlisted officers, senior enlisted, etc. Do you have any recommendations that you would like to see in the Army? So if you had a chief of staff wargaming list, what would you like to see in the offices and at your different levels that would help facilitate just what you were describing?
Yeah, so I think Littoral Commander, that system is outstanding. I think that's really, really good, and so I think that one should be on the list. I also GMT Games publishes their 1940s series, and there's a Salerno 43 is one that I really enjoy. It's a hex encounter game. It goes down to it's got battalions and regiments and divisions in it. It actually is the Salerno invasion, Operation Avalanche, takes place over that month, and it has some really interesting choices about how to allocate enablers and how you're going to allocate your artillery support, your air support, and that kind of thing in order to enable maneuver. So you've got really tough terrain that you're into the Italian mountains. You're trying to get out. Unsupported attacks are pretty low chance of success.
Right.
And you just have a limited amount of supplies. You're going to have to meter that as forces flow into the beachhead and as weather affects you and all of that. And I think that game is simple enough where you can actually sit down and learn that in a 30-minute session rather than spend multiple sessions learning the system. So I think that one for Army guys, I think that one would be a good one. But I think it's difficult to strike the balance between accessible enough for non-gamers to pick up and complex enough that it really gets at some of the lessons that I think are important from wargaming. So
Yeah. That makes a lot of sense. It's one of the reasons why um, Tim has advocated a lot for the Company Commander game because it's not excessive in terms of click rate. Like you don't have to click too much in order to make the game play. And it does a great job of really highlighting the things that some of these different units can and can't do and what the enemy can and can't do. And so in terms of some of the junior guys where you're not trying to make them fall asleep at the table learning this complex game system, it's easier to put them in front of a computer and just play this game. Now, that being said, we only have so many seats on the Marine Corps University cloud. So it is a hope of mine that, in terms of as we leverage these lists, hey, we want more Marines, we want more soldiers playing these games. What can Big Army or Big Marine Corps do to facilitate that? And that's as simple as, like, is it creating another cloud? Is it because Company Commander is going to have a version called Company Commander Anywhere, and that's legitimately their game, where you don't have to be on a cloud to play it. You can play it. You can play other people who have Company Commander Anywhere, and all of that happens without the extra resource of a cloud. So, what a great way to get a game, huge educational capability put in front of soldiers and Marines so they can start learning more about their weapon systems, their vehicles, what their bad guy, what their enemy is potentially going to be trying to do to them.
Yeah, and I think I think there's also some value in potentially looking at how, like, what emphasis the services are putting on wargaming. So right now, wargaming is something that you do because you're trying to, maybe it's something that you enjoy, it's like a hobby, or maybe it's something that you want to improve yourself as part of your professional development. I think it would be interesting to potentially if there was some aspect of wargaming that went into evaluations
Mm-hmm.
or your fitness reports and talk about how that could affect people going down the road. Maybe that's part of your evaluation, how you make decisions. And so I think that would be, if you saw, if the Army were to do something like that and the Marine Corps to do something like that, I think you would find a lot more people would spend a lot more time looking at wargaming and ways to improve at wargaming, because you train for the test in a lot of ways. So, like, right now, I think there are resources that are out there. There are lots of commercially available war games, but you don't see tons and tons of people taking advantage of those systems, even though so
It is.
we'll see what we do, and hopefully making it more accessible, like Mr. Barrick is doing, will improve uptake.
Yeah, absolutely. It's one of those things, and I love that idea of how can we make wargaming as a way to test a leader's ability to make decisions. Not necessarily the right decision. We're not testing doctrine. We're testing the ability to make decisions, and I think it's going to do two things. And a part of each of these is that one of the reasons why I don't think it would actually happen. But first and foremost, are you willing to put yourself on the line and make a decision? Because that's what I fear the most, is a commander who's unwilling to make the decision, who's unwilling to roll the dice and play a game and have them like, well, I don't want this game to be how, like, I don't want this to negatively affect my career. It's like, okay, well then, sir, respectfully, study more, right? Learn more about what's going on. No one's going to demote you because you lose the war game. They're gonna not promote you because you're showing an adverse ability to assess a situation and make a decision, right? So how do we create an environment where you're able to effectively see that? And then the other piece is always the gameism, right? I think OWS is one of the most fantastic systems that is incredibly comprehensive in terms of, do all the capabilities of the units and the process by which you go through an engagement make the most sense. That being said, you are still subject to the rolls of the dice. So, what game can you find that is going to be the one that you can make a part of a no kidding assessment. Again, it has less to do with does this person win all the games? Because it's very easy to say, like, hey, this guy wins all the time, so I want him in charge. It's less about that and more about is this person trying new things? Are they trying to innovate? Is there sound thought process going behind their decisions? I would, just like you said, love for that to be a part of an evaluation. Just because what I don't want is a leader who's scared to make decisions. That's who I can't have running regiments or brigades or divisions. We need people who are ready to aggressively identify what it is they need to know, make a decision, and then ruthlessly execute that decision.
Yeah, and I think in the army we go to the we call them the CTCs, or we've got the JRTC and JMRC and JMSC. So we've got these and NTC. We've got these training centers where you go as a brigade and train against the professional Op 4. And it's really it's a war game. You're going through and running through this, and so we do evaluate people and how they make decisions. And you're not necessarily evaluated on the outcome. To your point, it's not necessarily whether you win or lose, because the conditions can be stacked against you, or they can be made possible for you to win. But it's how you go through the process, how you manage the force, how you manage information, how you make decisions, how you get that out. And I think something like that at a more junior level, getting repetitions for that, I think could be pretty interesting. And could improve our ability to look at a situation, because it just, you recognize patterns when you see them over and over again. And so
Right.
when you're in a situation, you're able to see things multiple times, and you look at it, and you can take a look at the breakout map in WarPlan and say, okay, these are the advantages, these are the disadvantages, these are strengths, these are weaknesses. I think take somebody off of the street and give them and sit them down behind the Axis forces in WarPlan and say, okay, go ahead and win this game, and let's see that if they can assess the situation, if they can look at those advantages and those disadvantages, and then make a plan that uses them, and then runs through and executes and sees what the enemy does, and then as the enemy makes choices, they make choices. I think that's tough. That's a valuable thing. So hopefully that's something that we could incorporate more into the joint force. Like I said, I think that you'll get a lot more uptake if it became part of your evaluation. But you're right. That's unlikely, I think, certainly in the near term. Yeah.
All right, Greg, this has been a fantastic conversation. I really appreciate the time that you've given to the Red Diamond Wargame podcast. And if I don't get to see you across the table in the Commandant's Cup, then I really hope we get to match up again in a tournament in the future. Thanks so much for your time today.
Yep. Thanks for having me. It was great playing, and yeah, again, thanks to MCU for letting us Army guys in.
Absolutely.